It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. The Nigerian government is considering a proposal to take over power supply from the distribution companies, DISCOs, and hand it over to a German firm, Siemens. It warned on Wednesday that it could no longer tolerate the shoddy performance of the DISCOs, which has undermined its efforts at ensuring stable supply of electricity. Should the proposal be approved, Siemens will fully take charge of power generation, transmission, and distribution. Briefing reporters after the weekly Federal Executive Council FEC meeting in the State House on Thursday, the Minister of Power, Mr. Saleh Maman, said he regretted that even when the DISCOs receive 3,000 megawatts, they shortchanged the system by paying for only 1,000 megawatts, threatening the federal government could no longer continue to subsidize their inefficiency. Well, according to the Minister for Power, Nigeria is now generating 13,000 megawatts. It transmits 7,000 to the DISCOs, but us, the end users, only get 3,000, and the DISCOs only pay for 1,000 naira, which is clearly dishonest. So he criticized their inefficiency. But the DISCOs, you'll recall, have their own side of the story. They also claim that the federal government has not fulfilled their promises, that initiatives like the Rural Electrification Agency infringes on the agreement between DISCOs and the government, and also they just generally feel like there are no cost-reflective tariffs. So all these shortfalls are actually not their fault. So either way, this threat has been issued, and one will hope that they pull their socks up. Otherwise, the federal government might make good on the threat.
Well, I mean, this has been a big issue in the electricity sector in Nigeria for quite a while, from, the regulatory authority, the regulatory agency, blaming DISCOs for all of the problems in that sector, to the Ministry of Power having issues with the distribution companies, sometimes even not engaging them as, the DISCOs had requested, and all kinds of controversy between the regulator and the DISCOs over the issue of metering, over the issue of tariffs. And of course, at one point, the federal government had made this threat at a time when former governor of Lagos State, Babatunde Fashola, was in charge of the power ministry. And now the matter has come up again. Now, I think there are a number of dimensions to it. We have 10 DISCOs. Now, some people have tried to argue whether the problem is at the transition end of the value chain, or at the generation end, or the distribution end. But what the minister has done now is to say that from his own investigations and from what he has seen, is the DISCOs that constitute the problem. Now, the issues involved, one, there's politics. And the DISCOs push this a lot. They say that when the federal government says they would revoke their licenses, that what they're actually saying is that they do not want the present set of investors. Because these were investors, you know that roadmap began with the Jonathan administration. And major players in this administration had said, well, the process of selecting the present players at the level of distribution particularly, as far as they are concerned, was not transparent enough. I mean, some of them even made comments like, the incompetence and the inefficiency of the DISCOs. So if they take the DISCOs away from them, the DISCOs are likely to argue that this is a question of politics. One government trying to discredit something that was done by another government. The second part of it that government needs to consider is the message that this sends about investments. Some of these DISCOs, partnered with some foreign interests. They got loans from here and there. And if you have this uncertainty, if you suddenly, somewhere down the line, now say that, oh, they are inefficient, we throw them away. There used to be 11. The Yola DISCO pledged force majeure. So what happens? How does that build investor confidence? The third point is about the sanctity of contracts, okay? Because there are contractual obligations involved. If the DISCOs have their licenses revoked, the federal government should also be prepared for the possibility of having, a load of suits, lawsuits on its head. And I understand that in the agreement that was signed with the federal government, there is a clause there about arbitration, and that the place of arbitration is in London. And we may have, another issue again, of getting involved in an international tussle that may not be in the best national interest. As for Siemens, in July 2019, the federal government of Nigeria signed an agreement with Siemens to deliver 25,000 megawatts of electricity by 2025, and that's supposed to be in 3 phases. Now, that agreement, which is part of the National Electrification Roadmap, is in 2 parts, the technical side, the commercial side. So to deliver 25,000 megawatts by 2025, and then to help upgrade distribution, generation, transmission. And the recommendation is that, Siemens has a track record. In 2018, Siemens helped Egypt to upgrade. In April 2019, Siemens also signed on to the Iraq electrification project. So they seem to have a track record. But all the other issues that I've identified, investment, sanctity of contracts, the political side of it, may be issues that they need to look at very carefully before the federal government takes a step that may not be in our interest. But what the minister has said is that a memo has been prepared, which will be considered by the Federal Executive Council. And I'm sure that when the matter goes before FEC, it will be debated, and the various stakeholders will probably see that it's not as easy. It may not be as easy as the Minister of Power makes it appear.
Certainly. I mean, you've definitely given dynamics that make me understand the complications to this, the political side, the fact that at the end of the day, we're looking at investments here and the confidence of investors. And of course, we're also looking at the sanctity of contracts. But as well, the main thing here is that we need electricity. And there's a huge problem and there's huge leakages within our power sector, and it needs to be sorted out. So this threat is definitely one that comes with a lot of baggage because there are a lot of dynamics to it. But it's a good way to show that something needs to be done. And it's a good step to show that the government is actually trying to take action, in my opinion anyway, because something does have to be done. I think you mentioned that we're getting 3,000 megawatts when we should be getting 7,000 as for what we're seeing. Yet here we are and we're not getting that. There's a lot that's being lost here and it needs to be felt. Something has to be done. We need guarantees.
For me, I'd be really quite dismayed if the contracts do not involve any kind of clause that allows for, in the event of a breach of whatever it is, the contract should be terminated. That has to, I hope, it's in
well,
there.
But that breach will have to be proven. I mean, the discourse have not been silent. They've drawn attention to the fact that there is a liquidity crisis in the sector that the government has not helped them in any way to address. Because the minister gave the impression that, it's the government that is subsidizing, and that government can no longer subsidize electricity consumption. But the discourse, on the other hand, are saying that, look, you don't even need subsidy. Allow market forces to play in this environment. But if that happens, then you and I will pay higher tariffs. And that could also have implications, in terms of relationship between government and the people. Yeah,
I tried to lay out the points of the view that the discourse hold, which is that without cost-reflective tariffs, so their hands are tied. But it's, I just need them to pull their socks up. I hope this threat works and it doesn't actually go as far as pulling the plug. That's not what we want.
That's the main
just pull your socks up, I hope. Still in Nigeria, the Rivers State government has condemned attacks on the former governor of the state, Dr. Peter Odili, and his family following the Supreme Court judgment that nullified the election of Mr. David Lyon as winner of the November 16th governorship election in Bayelsa State. Odili's wife, Justice Mary Odili, headed a 5-man panel of the Supreme Court that nullified the victory of Lyon and the All Progressives Congress, APC, on February 13th. The state government accused the Minister of State for Petroleum, Chief Timipre Silva, and the national chairman of the APC, Mr. Adams Oshiomhole, of sponsoring the attacks on Odili and members of his family. But in a swift reaction, the Deputy National Publicity Secretary of the APC, Mr. Yakini Nabena, accused River State Governor Dr. Nyesom Wike and People's Democratic Party, PDP, of being behind the protest at the Abuja residence of Justice Odili. We have to take a short break now. We'll be back with more news headlines. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now to the United States, where the race for the White House has just heated up. Last night saw yet another Democratic debate, but this time there was a difference. The arrival of a former mayor of New York, Michael Bloomberg, hasn't been on any of the ballots for the previous primaries or caucuses, and he won't appear until Super Tuesday next month. However, due to his surge in polling, he qualified to debate his rivals. With a new candidate entering the arena, the remaining 5 went on the attack. Arise Washington reporter Philip Crowther followed the developments.
wonderful country we have. The best
There was one obvious novelty on stage in Las Vegas, the presence of former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg. For this debate organized by NBC News, he qualified for the first time. The other 5 candidates had already taken to the stage 8 times. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren was the first to go after Bloomberg.
I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg.
Bloomberg spent most of his time on stage taking the blows, intervening very little and only speaking up when prompted.
One is, who can beat Donald Trump? And number 2, who can do the job if they get into the White House? And I would argue that I am the candidate that can do exactly both of those things. I'm a New Yorker. I know how to take on an arrogant con man like Donald Trump that comes from New York.
Vermont Senator and frontrunner Bernie Sanders also came in for criticism, but it's the ferocious attacks on Mike Bloomberg that defined this bare-knuckle fight in Las Vegas.
Look, I'll support whoever the Democratic nominee is, but understand this. Democrats take a huge risk if we just substitute one arrogant billionaire for another.
There are clear reasons why the gloves came off here in Nevada. The caucuses on Saturday constitute the 3rd early voting contest of 2020. And former Vice President Joe Biden, for one, needs a good result. Bernie Sanders is the favorite to win, not just in Nevada, but also nationally, where polls show him leading by over 10%. The newcomer on stage, Mike Bloomberg, isn't even competing in Nevada or next week in South Carolina, concentrating instead on Super Tuesday, when 14 states vote on the 3rd of March. Philip Crowther, Arise News, Las Vegas.
I have no idea why Michael Bloomberg participated in this debate since he's not on the ballot. And I'm sure after his performance, he's wondering as well. He didn't do very well, did he?
Well, you know, the Democratic Convention suspended the requirement for donations because he had said previously that he will fund himself. And, you know, in the guidelines, original guidelines, you needed to have a certain percentage of donor funding. And that's why he's here. He spent over $200 million on advertisement, the biggest. And that's what has helped him, you know, to become very popular in the polls. Yeah, but it was a disaster. It was inarticulate. He couldn't, you know, explain the issues. But Elizabeth Warren did very well, you know, taking full advantage of Michael Bloomberg. And I think, of course, your favorite, Pete Buttigieg, as usual, was the strongest debater there. Amy Klobuchar didn't do too well this time around. I didn't think so. Bernie Sanders, yes, of course, you know, stating the usual positions. And then as for Joe Biden, I think he improved a bit. But of course, you know that he's not a super debater. But we'll see what happens at the Nevada caucuses, you know, on February 22, and what happens thereafter in South Carolina.
Absolutely.
But the question is whether the person with the largest number of delegates, if he doesn't win the primary, you know, will be the candidate. I think all of them seem to agree, with the exception of Bernie Sanders, who is the one who is likely to find himself in that kind of situation. Anyway, Rotu Sudiri is here with the business
talk. Good morning. Very interesting topic there, the debates. So I was listening to the power discussion that you were having this morning, and that's in line with what, you know, the business community is talking about as well. But as far as Salim Aman, the Minister of Power's comments regarding the discos. It's important to point, I mean, you touched on a lot of this, but it's important to point out that the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission says that we're facing a tariff shortfall of about 545 billion naira in 2020. So if you think about what we're paying now, on average, it's about 25, 26 naira per kilowatt hour for what we're paying now. They've already ordered, I believe there's a directive for the new tariffs to go up April 1st. But even at that, I mean, you're looking at, I think it's about a 50% increase to about 48 or so naira per kilowatt hour. Is that going to be enough, you know, for the discos to be able to recoup what it is that they've invested? Because, you know, I have to say, some feel that the discos are getting the short end of the stick here because they've repeatedly said that the tariffs are just not cost reflective. And I saw the headline, the federal government's, you know, mulling whether or not Siemens can take over this thing. The electrification program, the roadmap for 25,000 megawatts or so with Siemens, is supposed to cost over ₦1 trillion.
1.8 trillion naira.
Right, and so, you know, it's the same model, it's the same market. You're just taking it away from the discos and giving it to Siemens, possibly. Do we think that Siemens is not going to request that there are market-friendly tariffs, you know, for them to be able to execute what it is that we want them to execute? It's going to be tough. So, you know, I do feel that the minister should cut the discos some slack. There's the issue of these meters. Everybody still does not, and Nigerians across the country still don't have prepaid meters. Yeah. A lot of people are still complaining about estimated billing and how much they have to pay. So you have to get those meters out to everyone. You have to be able to make sure that you can accurately cost them, and then the discos can now pay back what it is they're getting from the GENCOs and the transmission side. So it's still pretty heavy.
In any case, maybe we shouldn't take the minister's threat too seriously because of the many issues involved.
Right.
I mean, it gives the impression that if Siemens takes over, Siemens will be able to perform some magic.
Just like that.
Siemens was in Nigeria previously,
right.
You know, in the 1999 to 2003 phase. And we know what happened with Siemens. So now casting Siemens in the mode of a Father Christmas, coming to rescue the electricity sector, may not be as straightforward as they are painting it. Right. And also there is an enabling law, the Electricity Sector Reform Act. Right. So is the minister going to go to the National Assembly to also change, you know, the law, the act, you know, the enabling law. Right. So these are the issues. And then in any case, maybe the discos wouldn't mind if you are ready to buy them off, return their money, right. The investment, give them cash. Right. Will Nigeria be able to make that kind of offer when you consider the fact that even the Yola disco that pleaded their force majeure, that is supposed to be paid back up to now? I don't think they've been paid. Yeah. Yeah. So many issues.
The liquidity issue is quite heavy. But then again, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Roger.
We'll take a short break now and go to sports headlines. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now joining us is Aaron Akerejola, Arise News sports analyst. So what's happening, Aaron?
Doctor, good morning.
Yes, morning.
Tundu, it's good to see you.
Tundu is here today.
Yeah, she's looking radiant, I must say. Thank you very much. Leila, good morning.
I'll report you to the side.
All right, let's tell you that some people are not laughing coming into this morning, and the second leg of the UEFA Champions League round of 16 actually was played yesterday, and Tottenham Hotspur, in their own backyard, the new spanking new stadium, the Tottenham Stadium, were being knackered yesterday. All right, RB Leipzig being coached by a coach who is just over 30, took Jose Mourinho. They used to call him Junior Mourinho back in the day, and right now he's cooled the man that they used to actually name him after yesterday. It was a complete shambles for Tottenham Hotspur, who were actually bereft of ideas. Jose Mourinho complained that he lacked strikers. It's like almost going to a war with a gun without bullets, because he has two of his main strikers actually injured, talking about Heung-min Son and Harry Kane. And, well, unfortunately, he still has... restitution can still be made. 3 weeks' time, he'll be traveling to Germany, and let's see if he can overturn that 1-0 deficit.
Yeah, but Davies was really silly for that penalty.
Yeah,
there was
and of
no
course,
need
Ben
to give
Davies.
That away.
Yeah, that was it. Ben Davies just culpable in giving other penalty, and Timo Werner was not going to. He took it in the chin and decided to bury it.
Well, I think Mourinho may not be right to give the excuse of injuries. You know, injury-stricken players. Most of his strikers have been injured, and he thinks that it's an uphill struggle for him to be able to achieve results. Yeah. However, there is the other opinion that Jose Mourinho himself seems to have lost his spark, seems to have lost his magic. Since the last season, the Champions League, Tottenham Sports was in the finals, right?
Yeah, they were in the finals.
Of the Champions League. Since then, that team has been going more or less downhill. You know, the players are less athletic, they are less aggressive. I mean, they were completely outplayed yesterday in every department of the game. In fact, it's a surprise. You know, it's surprising that the German team didn't score more than one goal. Yeah. So I think it's, you know, it's not just about the strikers being injured. It's also about Jose Mourinho himself, are not living up to expectations. I don't know whether you agree.
I see where Jose Mourinho is coming from, understanding that quite a lot of players are actually injured because the people he would have depended on, those trusted players. Yeah, so if you have strikers, your main strikers actually out, it's almost difficult. And also
just Son and
yes,
come on,
the other guy was
and also Sissoko in the midfield that actually brings that steal to the midfield was also Mason. But before we go,
and he couldn't respond to the other team in terms of strategy. Technical.
That was why he considered just only one goal. He says like it is not 10-0, it is 1-0. I see people like you. I see critics like you. Yes,
lots worse.
Hopefully it's not. But let's actually tell you that in Nigeria there's been controversy brewing for quite a while right now about one man is very known. Daniel the Bull Amokachi, former player of the Super Eagles, Olympic winner back in Atlanta 96, former assistant Super Eagles coach from 2008, yes, Iguavon, and also Shaibu Ahmad at some point too. This man is well accomplished. Just recently we celebrated the fact that he was being made an ambassador of football in Nigeria. And then he posted something on his Instagram celebrating another appointment or another feather to his cap. And right now, it's almost causing quite a lot of confusion. That was what he actually put on his Instagram handle, breaking NFF appoints Amokachi, head of the technical department. And as it stands right now, there is someone still contracted to that job up until June. And rumors have it that Daniel Amokachi is favored to actually replace Bitrus Biwarang, who is the head of technical at the moment. But the Nigeria Football Federation have come out and refuted this claim that the job is not even open for discussion at the moment. But we are hearing that some eggheads actually pushing this man very far, that all he's garnered, whether being the coach of JS Hercules, or whether being assistant coach, Nasarawa United coach, or even a coach of Eimba International, because he's almost seen it all, might actually help the Nigerian national team refocus and probably move to the next level. But the confusion is still there as to whether or not it will happen right now, since a journalist felt overexcited, blew this particular news before time, because it's almost shooting Bitrus Biwarang, who still has a contract with the Nigeria Football Federation up until June. So well, it's a little bit scattered right now.
Well, I think the clarification from the NFF is useful. I mean, the online sports newspaper that revealed that broke the story claimed that there were negotiations, discussions going on between the NFF and not just Amokachi, a few others, including Eguavoyen, Ladan Boso, Mutiu Adepoju, and one other who seemed to be interested in the position of technical director. And all of them seem to be qualified. And even Mike Emenalo, he's
former Chelsea sporting director.
But now they've clarified it, because they've also said that Bitrus Biwarang has also applied for a renewal of his contract. So the impression you get from the rejoinder that they put out is that perhaps they are thinking of putting Biwarang, retaining him in that position.
No, but for Daniel Amokachi to have actually, there's one thing for a story to be out there. And for a man who the story is about to actually go on social media celebrating that particular news,
sure that is maybe Twitter handle.
That official. That actually is the official Instagram handle. He actually posted that story. So that means he knows something we don't know. And that is what is causing the confusion here.
It's still a bit awkward, isn't it?
That's the point.
Until June.
Honestly.
When we get overly excited.
Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Aaron.
Always a pleasure.